Okay, now that I've imported my content template, what I want to do is at this point, I want to start with the end in mind. So similar to how we would recommend designing course content through a backwards design approach, I want to take the same approach with designing my course in Brightspace. By that, I mean I'm going to start by organizing my gradebook. The reason for this is that, one is there's a lot of different ways that you can build in Brightspace. So this is not the only way to do it. This is simply our recommendation. And the reason is that when you start with your gradebook, you can then link the assignments, discussions, quizzes, and so on directly to your gradebook. That means that when students submit them, it will notify you within your gradebook that the student has submitted, and you can go ahead and access the student's assignment directly from your gradebook and grade them directly there, rather than having to grade them in assignments and then transfer those grades manually into the gradebook. The other benefit is that you can also link your content from your to-do list directly to the assignments, which are then linked to the gradebook, or the discussions, which are then linked to the gradebook. So we're going to start there. And again, you don't have to follow this approach. It's simply our suggestion of how we find it most beneficial to design. So when I access my gradebook, I click on the Grades tab at the top. And you'll notice I have a couple of different options, but it should have me fall right on Setup Wizard. And the Setup Wizard will take me automatically through the steps of setting up my gradebook. And then at any point that I want to make any changes, I can always come back to the Setup Wizard to make any changes. So I'm going to click Start. And from here, it's giving me the option to pick a weighted gradebook structure. That would be one in which the every assignment is worth however many points, but that together they're equal to 100%. And then that way Brightspace is doing the grade calculations for me. So it will automatically, based on the weighting standards I set, calculate a final grade out of 100% for students. Another option is points, which will allow you to set points per assignments and then have those points equal a total amount of points for the course. And then you would basically calculate for the student what the final percentage grade is based on the final points grade out of points possible. And then you can have a formula if you have a special formula outside of these two. But these two are the typical two. So I really like a weighted gradebook, so I'm going to go ahead and select weighted and show you how to set this up. I will click continue. And now it's asking me how I want the final grade to be released. So do I want this grade to be achieved and provided to students as a calculated final grade? Do I want it to be an adjusted final grade, meaning that I will be able to modify that calculated grade before it's released to students? Or do I want it to be automatically released to the students? So I'm going to pick an adjusted final grade to give me the option to adjust if need be. It will still calculate for me, but then I can make adjustments. And I'm going to click continue. From here, I have grade calculations. And this is basically how do I want ungraded items to be treated. So if I want a running final grade viewable to my students, then I certainly want to drop any ungraded items because it will calculate all grades from all assignments. And if we haven't gotten to assignments yet, the students would have ungraded items. So I don't want those to be treated as 0. You do have the option to treat any ungraded items as 0, which if you're not providing transparency into their calculated final grade, that could be an option. But with the dropping ungraded items means that if a student does not submit or earns a 0, you do have to provide a 0 grade for the student. And then I have the option to automatically keep the final grade updated for the students so that they can see what their final grade is calculating at as they go through the course. I can deselect that if I chose, but I'm going to go ahead and keep that. And then because I chose weighted, I have to use a percentage for my grade scheme, so I'm keeping that. And then for my display options, this is how many decimal points you would want provided. Since a weighted gradebook does grade out of 100%, there's no need to have additional anything beyond 2 decimal points, but that can be changed depending on your preference. And then this is what the students are able to see. So they see their point grade, their weighted grade, the grade scheme symbol. Sometimes if you want to color code your grade book, you want students to be able to see that, you can. And then, the number of characters, all of these things are customizable. I typically just leave this as is. Here you do have the option again of the final grade calculation, displaying that final grade calculation to users. For now, I'm going to leave that unchecked, but you could certainly keep it checked. As you're going through and you want to explore these a little bit more, always feel free to click on these little question marks. They'll give you some more information into what that would mean. And again, you can try it one way, and if you want, you can always come back and adjust it. So this is my grade setup summary. I'm happy with it. I'm going to click Finish. So now I have my grade setup wizard done, and I need to, because I'm doing a weighted grade book, I'm going to start by creating categories for my grade book. And so what this would be is, let's say that my students are evaluated based on class discussions, of which maybe there's 8, and then research papers, of which there may be 5, and let's say there's, homework activities. So what this does is it allows me to, if I add them by category, it allows me to weight the category of the value of those. So if I want those 8 discussions to be only worth 10%, then I can go ahead and use the new categories. So that's what I really like about Brightspace's weighted gradebook. So I'm going to start with discussions. And the weight for these I'm going to keep at, let's say, 20%. And again, I can change this later. And I'm just going to click Save and New because I'm going to add a new category. So here I'm going to do maybe reflection papers. And for that, I'm going to do 10%. And I can click Save and New. And maybe I have some quizzes, which are worth 10%, and I'll click Save and New. And maybe there is 2 group presentations, which combined are worth 20%. And the rest I'm going to do as research paper, but I forget what I'm adding up to, but I'm going to show you what ends up happening. So let's say I'm going to make that worth 30%. And that's it. That's what my course is made up of. And you'll notice that it's already starting to do some math for me and helping me out. And it's saying my final calculated grade sums up to 90%, not 100%. So either I missed something or I need to come back here and add something. So you know what? I did miss something. I'm going to do a new category. And for this, I want participation to be worth an extra 10% of their grade. So now I have it. So I have each of my categories and how much they're worth. And then from there, I need to start populating my categories because you can see Brightspace doesn't like the fact that now everything is summing up to 0, even though I have it weighted within the gradebook. So I need to start building out my discussions, papers, quizzes, and so on. So from here, I'm going to go to New, and now I'm picking items. So those are my gradebook items or assignments. I have different options here for how I want to create this item, what type of item. It could be a numeric or pass-fail. There's some other options here as well on how I would grade this. I stick with numeric for the most part, so I'm going to go ahead and click numeric. And here I'm going to do week 1 discussion. You're going to notice I used week 1 to set this up. And this is really helpful for students. I highly recommend that you always include the week something is due in the title so that when students go looking in their discussions or assignments or quizzes, they can see right there, there's a lot of transparency provided as to, okay, this is for week 1. It just helps to clarify things when they don't have that face-to-face time with you to be able to ask those questions and get clarification on a regular basis. And then here, because I've set up my categories, I need to assign this to my discussions category. I'm going to leave the description blank because I'm going to provide the prompt in the discussion forum. And I want each of my discussions to be out of 10 points. So I'm going to leave that there. But I'm only going to do, let's say, 5 discussions. So that means that each discussion is going to be worth 20% of the discussion grade. So from there, I'm going to put 20%. And if I want to add a rubric, I can pull a rubric that's already been loaded, or I can create my own rubric. I'm not going to do that for now. And then I'm going to click Save and New. Okay, so feasibly then I would go ahead and build out my other 5 discussions. But for now, I'm going to show you one from each category. I'm going to go ahead and click Numeric. And here I'm going to add one of those reflection assignments. So in week 2, the students are doing a reflection activity. That is going under reflection papers, and it is going to be worth 25% of their reflection papers grade. It's graded out of 10 points, and it's worth 25% of their reflections grade. Again, I have the option to do the rubrics here. For now, I'm going to click Save and New. Next, I'm going to set up their quiz. So we'll do a quiz in week 3. Here, I will do the quizzes. The quiz is going to be worth, there's only going to be 2 quizzes, so it's, I keep doing that, 50%. But I like to either have each assignment worth 10 points or 100. That way it's pretty easy for students to know how they scored overall with their, what reflection that is upon their a letter grade. So here, Save and New. And another one, that group project's going to be due in week 5. They're going to have 2, so the first one is due in week 5. And lastly, I have their paper. So the research paper is a term paper that will be due in week 14. So I'm going to just click week 14 or add week 14 there, and I have their research paper. And it will be worth 100% of their research paper grade. So I'm going to be done now, and I'm going to just finish populating this gradebook off video. Okay, so here I am. My gradebook has been set up. You'll notice I don't have any more alerts at the top anymore telling me that I'm not up to 100%. I have 100% of my discussions, my reflections, quizzes, group presentations, research paper. And you'll notice for participation, rather than doing one for each week, I just did one item for weekly participation. Since students aren't actually uploading anything here, I'm choosing to just provide a participation grade at the end of the term. So that is a personal preference. You could create one for each week and then populate it with a point value each week if that's what you decided. So my grade book is done, and next I'm going to show you how you will go ahead and set up your quizzes, discussions, and assignments, linking them to these items. You'll see that in the next videos.